Hey there, welcome to Sam's Medventures. Today, I'd like to talk about medical school interviews and how you can prepare yourself to ace them. I want to start this video by saying that I don't consider myself an expert in interviewing. In fact, as I'm making this video, I'm currently preparing for my own medical school interviews. This video is a compilation of tips and insights that I've found helpful in preparing for my interviews, and I hope that they can assist you as well. If you clicked on this video, you probably have submitted your secondary applications and are currently awaiting interview invites from medical schools. Or you may have had the fortune of already having received a few interview invites. Or you may just be curious to know how medical school interviewees prepare for their interviews. Whatever your reasons, you are in the right place. In this video, I'll discuss the steps that you can take to cross this final hurdle in the medical school admissions process and secure that coveted acceptance. Without any further ado, let's get right into the video. In order to begin preparing for your medical school interviews, it is important to start by getting to know the different types of interviews that you may be faced with, as well as to be aware of the different degrees of information your interviewer or interviewers may have regarding your application prior to your interview. Before we jump into the different types of interviews, it is important to keep in mind that regardless of the type of interview, your interviewer or interviewers may have differing levels of knowledge regarding your application. If your interviewer has access to your entire application prior to your interview, then this is considered an open file interview. If your interviewer is allowed access to only a part of your application, such as only your extracurriculars or only your personal statement, then this is considered a partially open file interview. And finally, if your interviewer has no access whatsoever to your application prior to your interview, then this is considered a closed file interview. Understanding the extent of information that the interviewer has regarding your application will allow you to strategically select topics that will better reflect your strengths as an applicant, regardless of the type of interview you are faced with. With that being covered, now let's jump into the different types of medical school interviews that you can expect. The first type of interview that can be conducted is a classic one-on-one interview with a single interviewer. As stated before, the interviewer can have varying degrees of knowledge regarding your application, though for this type of interview, it is more likely that they will have access to your entire application before your interview. The person interviewing you could be a faculty member of the medical school, a member of the medical school community, or they could also be an alumnus of the medical school. This type of interview may also allow you to learn more about the medical school or the medical profession. This is because it is likely that you will be given time to ask your interviewer questions at the end of this type of interview. The second type of interview that you might encounter is a panel interview, where several interviewers evaluate you at the same time. In this type of interview, multiple panelists are able to get to know you within a short span of time. This type of interview may also allow you to ask your interviewers follow-up questions, making this a dynamic and interactive interview experience. The third, and perhaps the most popular type of medical school interview, is the MMI style interview. In this type of interview, you are given a question or a scenario that you must answer or respond to at each of a set number of different MMI stations. At each MMI station, you are able to interact one-on-one with a different member of the medical school's admissions committee. This may include current faculty of the medical school, current medical students, or members of the community in which the medical school is located. At the start of each station, you are given a minute or two to read a question or a prompt that you must then answer to your interviewer within a specified amount of time, typically 5 to 6 minutes. MMIs are designed such that each interviewer has no idea of what your performance was at any of the other MMI stations when evaluating your performance. This is meant to reduce bias in the interview process. This may also allow you to recover from mediocre performance at one MMI station and still register a strong performance at the next. The fourth and final type of medical school interview is a group interview where multiple applicants are participating in one interview at the same time. In this type of interview, you're often given a problem or a scenario in which you must come up with a solution in a set amount of time. There often isn't one correct answer. Rather, interviewers are looking for how you collaborate and contribute in a team setting. This type of interview may also allow you to showcase your problem-solving skills in a team setting. Because most medical schools will usually stick to 1 or 2 interview formats, the best way of figuring out what type of interview you'll be facing is to check the interview invite email that the medical school has sent you. The email might contain information regarding what type of interview you will be facing, as well as whether or not you have the option of taking the interview either in person or virtually. Regardless of the format of your medical school interview, there are some common types of questions that are asked in medical school interviews. Because these types of questions are fairly common, interviewers might expect that you are prepared to answer these questions. A few of the common types of questions asked in medical school interviews are as follows. It could be a general interview starter, such as, "Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?" It can also be a question that asks about your motivations for going to medicine, such as, "Why medicine? Why not be a PA or a nurse?" It could also be a question that asks about your personal experiences, such as, "Tell me about a time where you failed. How did you recover from it?" And also, it could be a question that asks about difficult ethical and moral scenarios, such as, "Tell me about an ethical dilemma that you faced and how you dealt with it." Continuing on, you may be asked about questions regarding your extracurriculars, such as, "Can you tell me about a specific experience you had while working with underserved populations? What challenges did you face?" You may also be asked questions regarding healthcare policy, such as, "Can you tell me what you know about the Affordable Care Act?" Or you might be asked questions regarding current developments in medicine, such as, "What do you think is the most significant development in medicine in the last 10 years?" To cover a few more of the types of interview questions you may be asked, you might be asked regarding how you envision your future, such as, "Where do you see yourself in 10 years?" You may also be asked why you applied to the specific medical school that you are interviewing for. And of course, if you apply to DO schools, you might be asked, "Why DO? What drives you to considering an osteopathic medical education?" Also, if you are applying to medical schools that have a major focus on research, you might be asked questions such as, "Can you tell me a little bit about the research you did as an undergraduate?" Of course, if you are applying to MD PhDs, MD MPHs, or any other types of specialized programs, you will be asked questions pertaining to those, such as, "How do you plan on incorporating your MPH degree in your medical practice?" Or, "Why are you considering a dual MD PhD pathway instead of just the regular MD pathway?" Finally, instead of being asked a question, you might be given a scenario and be asked to act in a particular role while your interviewer acts as a different role. Now that we know about the different types of questions that can be asked in medical school interviews, let's go over strategies that will help us answer them. For this type of question, it is important to not give the interviewer a list of your extracurricular activities. Rather, it is important to highlight things that might make you unique. This could be your family or your upbringing, your hobbies, or your travel experiences. You can also consider weaving in anecdotes that highlight your character and your values. For this type of interview question, saying, "I want to help people," is not an acceptable answer. Almost all professions are able to help people to some degree. Instead, to answer this question effectively, focus on your clinical experiences. Reflect on how your clinical experiences made you feel and how becoming a physician will accentuate those experiences. For this and for other similar types of interview questions, your interviewer is trying to find out how you respond to adverse situations. Therefore, to answer this question effectively, try to give a heartfelt example of a time you faced adversity and how you recovered from it. Also, be sure to include what you learned from the experience as well as how you plan to apply what you learned in the future. For this and for similar types of interview questions, it is important to not only describe the activity, but also to narrate a personal anecdote you have from the experience. Be sure to showcase what you learned through your experience, as well as any opportunities to mention teamwork, if applicable. In order to answer this type of medical school interview question effectively, it is important to know the 4 pillars of medical ethics, which are autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, and justice. It is important to be able to analyze a given ethical scenario based on these 4 ethical pillars, and by doing so, be able to demonstrate your understanding of the 4 pillars and how to balance them in order to come to a decision for a given ethical scenario. For this type of question, there is often no one right answer, and your interviewers are looking for your ability to apply medical ethics to come to a decision. Also, if you are asked to narrate an ethical dilemma that you came face to face with, it is important that you be able to explain the reasoning you used in order to justify the decision that you took. To answer this type of medical school interview questions effectively, it is important that you demonstrate your knowledge of key aspects and major developments in healthcare policy. Therefore, it is important to know what significant shifts are currently occurring in healthcare policy, as well as how contemporary events around the world may shape them. Interview questions such as these are an opportunity to showcase your keeping abreast of the latest developments in medicine, as well as your commitment to the lifelong learning that you will be doing as a future physician. Therefore, it is important to know what the latest scientific discoveries in the field of medicine are. You may also be able to offer suggestions in your answer regarding how these developments may impact the future of medicine. In order to answer this type of interview question effectively, it is important that you merge past experiences with future goals. In fact, questions like these provide you an opportunity to illustrate how you envision your future life and career as a physician to look like. If you wish, you may also incorporate the subspecialty you see yourself joining in your answer, which may also align with the mission of the medical school. For these types of interview questions, it is important that you showcase familiarity and fit with the medical school, its mission, its vision, as well as its culture. Therefore, it is very important that you know the reasons for why you apply to the medical school that you are interviewing for. It is also important that you are able to articulate these to your interviewer. Be sure to highlight specific programs or resources that the school has and how they resonate with your future goals as a physician in your interview as well. If you are interviewing at DO schools, it is important that you are able to demonstrate to your interviewer your familiarity with the osteopathic principles for medical treatment. While doing so, it is also important to demonstrate your exposure to osteopathic medicine as well as any shadowing experiences you may have had with osteopathic physicians. Of course, you will want to talk about why you want to pursue a career as an osteopathic physician. In order to effectively answer questions related to research, it is important to be able to describe what your research was, what your role was within the research being conducted, and what the results were that were significant that you found. These questions also provide you with an opportunity to highlight your research-related achievements such as poster presentations, honors theses, and publications, which may come in handy if you are interviewing at a medical school that is research focused. Since I have not applied to any specialized programs such as MD PhDs, MD MPHs, or others, if you find that you are seeking answers for how to answer questions that are pertinent to the interviews for these specialized programs, I encourage you to seek resources that are available elsewhere, either online or physically, that will help you answer these types of interview questions. In order to answer situation-based acting questions effectively, it is very important that you understand what role you are acting as and what role your interviewer is acting as. While it is difficult to come up with specific tips because of the myriad of different scenarios you may be presented with, it is important to take steps that a reasonable person would take in your scenarios, as well as to be able to demonstrate your reasoning to your interviewer even though you are acting. Now that I've talked a little bit about the specific types of questions that you may be asked in your medical school interviews, I'd now like to give some general advice about interviews and talk about resources that I've found helpful in preparing for my own interviews. Firstly, you may have noticed that there is a common theme. In almost all types of interview questions, it is often beneficial to either narrate an anecdote or a story in answering your question. There is a good reason for this. Storytelling is almost always a more effective way of conveying your strengths as an applicant and showcasing your traits rather than straightforward narration. Therefore, share stories, anecdotes, and personal experiences as often as you can in your answers. Doing so will allow your interviewers to gain a better understanding of who you are as a person and what you stand for, which is ultimately the reason for their interviewing you. Additionally, prior to your interview, try to find out whether or not you're allowed to take notes during your interview. While it is important not to look down too often during your interview, having the ability to take notes will allow you to jot down key points and therefore may improve your answering certain questions or scenarios. For group interviews, it is very important that you do not speak over your fellow interviewees. Rather, it is important that you acknowledge the perspectives of each of your fellow interviewees while also contributing your own thoughts to reach a consensus. Therefore, it is important to listen attentively and to try to not lead the conversation too much. That being said, it is important to not be afraid to speak up, especially when no one has spoken in a while. At the end of your interviews, it is good practice to have questions ready to ask your interviewers should they give you time for doing so. While preparing your questions, however, ensure that they are not so specific that your interviewer cannot answer them. They are human beings after all, and if your question is extremely specific, they may not be able to adequately answer your question, even if it pertains to their medical school. Also, don't forget to utilize other resources to bolster your interview preparation. The pre-medical and the medical school subreddits are excellent places to gain good advice regarding how you can prepare for interviews. Also, there are countless books and websites that are dedicated to helping bolster your interview preparation, and so don't forget to use those as well. To enhance your ability to tackle ethical questions, I recommend utilizing resources that elucidate the 4 pillars of medical ethics, and a Google search might be the best way of finding those. A great resource that I have had the fortune of finding is the University of Washington School of Medicine's Ethics in Medicine page, which provides valuable insights regarding how the 4 pillars of medical ethics can be applied in practical scenarios in healthcare, the link to which I have included in the description below. In order to stay updated regarding the latest developments in medicine and healthcare policy, I recommend reading articles from reputable news sources either physically or online. Subscribing to medical journals, health newsletters, and trusted news sources will give you timely updates regarding emerging research, healthcare policy changes, as well as important trends in healthcare. Additionally, consider following influential medical organizations and thought leaders on social media. The insights and the commentary they can provide on current issues may deepen your understanding of medicine. And those are the tips I have for you to ace your medical school interview. If you are at the stage where you're preparing for medical school interviews, take heart in the fact that you are almost at the end of your medical school admissions journey. If you have received an interview invite, know that the medical school that has invited you is seriously considering you as a potential candidate, and walk into your interview with that confidence in mind. If you feel anxious about your medical school interview, especially as it draws near, take a moment to look back at how far you've come. Treat the interview as the final pin you have to knock down to secure that coveted seat in medical school. Thank you for watching this video. If you found the content in this video helpful, please consider giving it a like. Drop your thoughts down in the comments below and consider subscribing to the channel for more pre-med content. Take care. I'll see you again in the next video. Remember, let your passion for medicine shine through and everything else will fall into place.